Hi guys, am I audible? If you're able to hear me, please give a response in the chat box. I'll know that you guys are able to hear me and we're live. Just looking for some responses from people so that I know that we are live. Post that we can start. Am I audible? Am I audible? Perfect. So there are some responses coming in. There was a bit of a delay. Apologies for that. So let's start the session for today. As usual, I'm going to give a brief idea about what we're going to do today. We have 8 critical reasoning questions, solid ones, to discuss today. We also have some of those which came in XAT in the previous years. So we will have a quiz which will go parallel to this, like how we normally do our live sessions. So you can visit the first link that you see in the description and visit our dashboard, and you will be able to see under upcoming live quizzes, there's a live quiz for critical reasoning for today, which is the one that we're going to do parallel to today's discussion. So once you have reached the critical reasoning live quiz, just click on start and click on got it and stay there. I haven't started the first question yet. So how we'll be going about the discussion is you will attempt a question there and you can come back here for the discussion. We'll go front and back between the quiz page and the discussion page here. So that's going to be the format, and I would strongly encourage you to put in your doubts in the chat box, and that's the prime reason why we have this as a live session. In case you have any queries, we can get it sorted during the session itself. Okay, let's start. And okay, before we can start, if you have already reached the quiz page, please type Q in the chat box so that I'll know that you guys are ready for the quiz. Perfect. I'm seeing some responses in the chat box. I'm going to go ahead and start the first question in the quiz. The first question is up in the quiz. It's also up on the screen here. This is a separate option. 1 and 2 only is a separate option. 3 only is a separate option. Great, the time is up. Let's see how we can solve this. Before that, let's see the status of the leaderboard. Very good. Some of you have got it right. A few might have got it wrong as well. Let's see how we can approach this. Okay, someone is asking, sir, is the question not visible on the screen? I think it is visible on the screen, right? Is there any problem looking at the question? Okay, let's attempt this one. The opposition is protesting against the new farm bills introduced by the central government, saying that they are not just harmful to the farmers, they penalize the consumers too, for no fault of theirs. After the implementation of the bills, food prices will increase by leaps and bounds, especially for the middle and low income families of India. And the taxpayers' pockets will be emptier by lakhs of crores of rupees. Okay, this is what the opposition is saying. Which of the following strengthens the opposition's claims? Let's look at the options. First one, the statements. First one, the subsidies provided by the central government to the farmers will increase roughly 56 lakh crore rupees a year. Well, this is going to say that more of taxpayers' money is going to go out, right? Which in turn will result in 32 lakh crore rupees more in higher food prices. So higher food prices also tells that they were speaking of food prices going up, right? Food prices will increase by leaps and bounds. So it supports that as well. So I would say the first one will strengthen the opposition's claim. Okay, let's look at the next one. According to a study by the erstwhile agriculture minister, every 100 rupees of benefits provided to farmers by the government costs the consumer and the taxpayers roughly 500 rupees. 100 rupees of benefits given will cost the consumers and taxpayers roughly 500 rupees. So the new farm bill, which is going to subsidize things for farmers, is definitely going to empty the taxpayers' pockets even more, right? So this is going to support that part of it. Let's look at the third one. The average full-time farmers have an average net worth of over 30 lakh rupees per annum, whereas the per capita GDP of India is this much. Net worth of farmers versus per capita GDP of India. They are just showing those two and they are saying that net worth of farmers is more than this. But how is it going to support any of the claims that is made by the opposition here, right? So it doesn't support any of the claims made by the opposition here. Only 1 and 2 are supporting, and that is the answer. So you can just take it as a separate option. It should have been 5 options here. It is instead given as 4. It should have been option 4 is this and option 5 is this. Anyway, so 1 and 2 only is the answer for this question. If you have any doubt, please put in the chat box. We can discuss. Great. If you're clear with this, please type 2. If you're clear with why only the first and the second statements are supporting the opposition's claim. If you're clear with why we are going with 2, please type 2 in the chat box. We are going with just 1 and 2 are supporting the opposition's claim. Perfect. Let's move to the next question then. I'm going to the next question in the quiz. Those of you who are joining us late, please click the first link in the description. You will be able to take a live quiz which goes parallel to this. In case you're watching this as a recorded video later and you're not there in the live session, you can just follow along because the questions will keep flashing on the screen as well. Great. I'm going to move to the next question in the quiz. The next question is up in the quiz. I have also activated it on the screen here. In case you're looking at the screen and trying to solve, and if the letters are not very clearly visible, you might have to increase the resolution of the video. The video is being streamed at 1080p. So if you happen to look at it at, let's say, 360p or 480p, you might not see the letters clearly. if your internet allows for that kind of a speed, you can take it up to 1080p. I think even at 720p, the letters should be visible. Just increase the quality of the stream. Take it up to at least 720p to see the letters clearly. Okay, the time is up. Let's see what is the status of the leaderboard at the end of your attempts on this question. Very good. Some of you have got it right. Let's see how we can approach this. The latest Russian attacks, which are thought to have begun last spring, have exposed a substantial blind spot in the software supply chain. Companies can track phishing attacks and malware all they want, but as long as they are blindly trusting vendors and cloud services like Microsoft, Salesforce, Google's G Suite, Zoom, Slack, SolarWinds, and others, and giving them broad access to employee email and corporate networks, they will never be secure. Cybersecurity experts say these cloud services create a web of interconnections and opportunity for the attacker. Mr. Shishom said, what we are witnessing now is a new wave of modern attacks against these modern cloud platforms, and we need 2021 defenses. That is, we need modern defenses. That's what he's trying to say. I mean, defenses which are effective in 2021. Some reports have confused the latest development with the breach of Microsoft itself. Okay, there's a small difference here, because here, if you see, they are saying that as long as you're blindly trusting these vendors, they are like third-party vendors, right? When you're trusting them and giving your email, through them, you could be attacked. So that's something different. Through these companies, you could be attacked if you're taking their services. And here, it is given, some reporters confuse the latest development with the breach of Microsoft itself. Now, this is an attack on Microsoft itself. So an attack on Microsoft itself is definitely different from an attack through Microsoft. Okay, so that's the difference. Let's see the options. We have to see which of these sentences will conclude this. And it is given, some reports have confused the latest development with the breach of Microsoft itself. Let's see the first option that is there. But the company said it stood by its statement last week that it was not hacked, nor was it used to attack customers. Looks fine, because we spoke about Microsoft. So when you say, but the company, it kind of makes sense because the company's name has been used here. Stood by its statement that it was not attacked, because it is given there, it is breach of Microsoft itself. It's not a breach through Microsoft, right? So that it was not attacked, nor was it used to attack customers. Looks like that couldn't. Let's look at the other ones also. The United States officials did not detect the attack until recent weeks. And then only when a private cybersecurity firm, FireEye, alerted American agencies that the hackers had evaded layers of defenses. See, if you see, there is a new turn here. Okay, what is a turn? From here till here, they are speaking about how you could be open to attack when you are trusting these cloud providers. But there is a term taken here taking about an attack on the cloud provider itself, not an attack through the cloud provider. After that, you cannot not complete this and go to a new point like this. Okay, so I'm getting rid of this one. Next, and the discovery shows how the Russian hackers use Microsoft. See, and the discovery, which discovery are we speaking about? Because there is no proper discovery being given here. Some reports have confused the latest development with the breach of Microsoft itself. And the discovery, there is no clear discovery mentioned towards the end for us to say the discovery. Like we have the company in the first option, the company is clearly stated here. So, and the discovery shows how the Russian hackers used Microsoft's resellers to target its customers indirectly. The discovery is not clear, so I would not go for that. However, United States officials said in a blog post on Wednesday that hackers also try to read. Okay, when you say however, now that would mean that there should be a turn, right? However, United States officials also said that hackers also tried to read Google's emails from a reseller account. So why are we using however here? It should be something like similarly, right? So however doesn't make sense here. I can get rid of option 4 as well. Let's look at 5th. It is evident that the Treasury and Commerce departments, the first agencies reported to be breached, were only part of far larger operations. They completely dropped the whole Microsoft point here. A new point was brought, an attack on the cloud provider itself, and then the point is completely dropped. You cannot go for option 5. You will have to continue with that point and say how that is making sense to go along with the rest of the paragraph. Okay, that's only happening in option 1. Type 1 if you're clear with why we are going with option 1 for this question. If you have any doubts, you can please type it in the chat box. I'll be happy to discuss whatever doubts you guys have. Perfect. Let's move to the next question then. I'm going to the next question in the quiz. The next question is up in the quiz. It's up on your screen here as well. Great, the time is up. Let's see what's the status of the leaderboard at the end of this question. Very good. Some have got it right. Let's see how we can approach this one. Kolkata is a city of palaces. The Archaeological Survey of India has recently discovered the buried ruins of an edifice. What's an edifice? Large building. Right? Said to be the stately home of the Chand Zaminars of Bengal. The building has found a place in history and evidence shows that it was built in 1546. But the exact date of its destruction is not known. One school of thought is that it was razed to ground, means it was brought to ground, in the great earthquake that rocked Kolkata in 1714. Another is it wasn't razed to ground in 1714, but lived further for more than a century and was demolished by the British in a tear down in 1843. Which of the following most supports the first school of thought? Okay, so there are two schools of thought. One believes that the earthquake of 1714 destroyed it completely. So one is in 1714 when the earthquake came, it got razed down completely. And the second school of thought is it still stayed there and it was demolished by the British in the tear down of 1843. So the other school of thought believes that it was only brought down in 1843. Now we have to find out which option will support the first school of thought. Means we'll have to look for an option which will support that it was actually brought down in the earthquake of 1714 itself, not in the 1843 one. Okay, so let's see which of the options will support that. A stack of boxes belonging to Meher Chand, who died in 1771, was found in the ruins dug up by the Archaeological Survey of India. Okay, 1771 falls somewhere here, but that only tells the death time of this person who owned those boxes. It is possible he lost those boxes in 1714 itself and it went inside the ruins. Right. So just because the owner of the boxes died in 1771, we cannot say the boxes continue to stay till 1771. It's possible the boxes went under the, along with the building, it became part of the ruins in 1714 itself. So this doesn't support the first one. Okay. It doesn't support the second one also. Okay. It doesn't support either of those. You cannot say anything from the first one. It could have happened here itself, or it might have got demolished here. First one neither supports this nor supports the other one. Let's go for the next one. The 1756 diary is of a historian from the Chand family, describes the grandeur and vibrancy of the edifice. 1756 diary. So 1756 falls in between this. So in a diary that was written in 1756, they are speaking about the grandeur and vibrancy of the edifice. It's possible that the edifice was destroyed in 1714 and they're describing about it. It is also possible that the edifice was not destroyed. It continued to stay till 1843 and that's why they're describing it. So just because someone is describing something doesn't mean that it has to exist at that point of time. I could describe about the Indus Valley civilization and the way they had their roads. That doesn't mean I am living at a period where Indus Valley civilization was there, right? So just because someone is describing at this point of time in timeline doesn't mean that structure should have existed at that point of time or the structure should have demolished before or after. So describing something doesn't mean anything about when the structure would have got demolished. Let's look at the next one. This is option 3. The edifice has been mentioned in many of the notes. Again, mentioning doesn't help, but let's continue to read. The edifice has been mentioned in many of the notes and diaries of historians belonging to the 18th century, but not in the notes and diaries of those belonging to the 19th century. Okay, first of all, this thing is 18th century. This is in 19th century. Right. Now let's see. So the edifice has been mentioned in many of the notes and diaries of historians belonging to 18th century. So 18th century notes and diaries, that edifice was mentioned in many, but not in the notes and diaries of those belonging in the 19th centuries. See, even then it is possible that it was only destroyed in the 19th century. Maybe it lost its sheen. People had other things to look at. Right? So just because people who wrote in 19th century did not speak a lot about this edifice doesn't mean this edifice must have got destroyed in 1714. It is possible it continued to stay, but probably it lost its charm. The people forgot about it. They started looking at other things. So again, description doesn't say anything about when it should have got destroyed. Fourth one. Archaeological evidence shows that the earthquake of 1714 deposited a vast 5-foot thick layer of rubble in the adjoining areas of the edifice, consisting of material similar to the buried ruins of the edifice recently found. Okay, now this is a solid evidence. This is not somebody describing something. Okay, let's look at this. Archaeological evidence. So they did find evidence that shows the earthquake of 1714 deposited vast 5-foot thick layer of rubble in adjoining areas. Now the key point is what comes after this. Adjoining areas of the edifice consisting of materials similar to the buried ruins of the edifice recently found by the Archaeological Survey of India. Now one could argue here that maybe those buried ruins were ruins of adjacent buildings that were there around the edifice. Possible, but it is also possible it is of the edifice itself. Now, till now, if you look at the options that we have seen, only this option is giving some kind of a solid evidence. The rest of them were speaking about describing, writing notes and all that. You can write notes and describe about anything that happened at any point of time. So for the first time, we have got some kind of a solid evidence in 4. Let's look at what 5 has to say. A famous contemporary historian has written in her book that an edifice in Kolkata was demolished by the British in a tear down in 1843. Okay, one historian has written. It is possible that the historian had wrong sources as well. Just because one historian has written about something, you cannot take it for granted as a source of truth. Okay, but archaeological evidence, when you say, then they are having solid evidence. They're not hearing from somebody and then telling. They have solid evidence with them. So of the options that we are here, again, we are only expected to find out the one that most supports it. We are not looking for one which absolutely verifies the claim. We are only supposed to look for something which most supports the claim. There is only solid evidence here, which is the archaeological evidence that we have got. This is about one historian. He might have had wrong sources. So the best option we have is option 4 for this question. Type 4 if you are clear with why we are going with option 4. And if you want me to explain any other options once again, you can type that number. I'll quickly summarize why we are going with option 4. First one, a stack of boxes belonging to somebody who died in 1771. So this person died in 1771. We don't know when this box disappeared. It could have disappeared in 1843 into the ruins. It also could have got disappeared much earlier before he died. So that doesn't tell anything about when this building would have got demolished. Next one, 1956 diary of a historian, of one historian's diary. If that describes something based on description, you cannot say when the building would have got demolished, because he's only describing the grandeur and vibrancy. Right now also one can sit and describe the grandeur and vibrancy of something which got demolished like 200 years back. That doesn't mean it is existing right now. So describing, and the edifice has been mentioned. So describing in some kind of a diary, mentioning in some kind of notes, all this will not carry as solid evidence. But if you look at 4, there is solid archaeological evidence found. Means they have actually found something which has got similar material to the entire edifice. So that's the best support we have in this case. Okay, the 5th one. A famous contemporary historian has written in her book that an edifice in Kolkata was demolished by the British and tear down 1841. Okay, that is again supporting the second one. We want something that supports the first one. But I would have actually dropped this option. The moment I read a famous contemporary historian has written, there itself you can drop it. So that's why I didn't even bother looking at what date it is speaking about in the end, because I kind of dropped it the moment I looked at one historian is writing something. But if you read further, you see that that person is also saying about 1843. So you cannot use that for confirming the first school of thought. Great. So type C once again if everybody is clear with why we are going with option 4 for this question. Perfect. Let's move to the next question. The next question is up on the screen. The next question is up in the quiz as well. Great, the time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard. Okay, let's see how we can solve this one. A child psychology research team conducted an experiment with two groups of preschool kids from Z Kids and House Tree. The Z Kids preschool was located in the downtown and the children were exposed to regular squeaks of running cars and vrooms of the revving engines. The House Tree preschool was located outside the hustle bustle of the city near a river with only natural sounds like the burbles of the river and twitters of the birds reaching the ears of the children. After 2 months, it was observed that kids from Z Kids cried more, fought more, were less attentive and more overweight than those in House Tree. Which of the following data points will help the most in drawing a conclusion based on the observation? 68% of the kids in Z Kids and 23% in House Tree show tendency to cry more, fight more. This is only kind of giving some values to what is already given here. It is given after 2 months, it was observed that kids from Z Kids cried more, fought more and all. This is just giving some kind of numbers to what is already stated. So this is not going to help in concluding anything here. I can get rid of the first one. Next one, the kids from a third preschool with soundproof walls showed higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention, and deteriorating health than those in House Tree and lower than those from Z Kids. Okay, let's see how this is going to help. So I could look at it like this. If you look at House Tree, it was located in a place where natural pleasant sounds were reaching the children. If you look at Z Kids, it was located at a place where a lot of unnatural, squeaky, cars running, all those kind of sounds were coming. Right. So if I were to compare them, I have got Z Kids here with the unpleasant sounds, and I have got House Tree here with natural and pleasant sounds. And now we are coming up with another situation where we have soundproof walls in the third preschool. So I can say no sound, right? So this gives us some kind of a scale. Unpleasant sound, no sound, pleasant sound. And what's happening here? They have given that these kids showed higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention, deteriorating than those in House Tree. So the negative incidences with the kids were higher in this than those in House Tree, but lesser than those in Z Kids. That kind of tells you that there is a clear pattern here, right? So the more unpleasant sounds that the kids are exposed to, the more they tend to fight, cry, and have lack of attention. There is no sound, they still have it, but not as much as it was in Z Kids. But it is more than what they would have if they are exposed to pleasant sounds. So that can help you to conclude that the more pleasant sounds that kids are exposed to, the more attentive they become, they don't fight much and so on. So you can make some kind of a conclusion based on this. So let me shortlist this one. Let's look at the other ones. The kids from a third preschool nearer to nature, exposed to caterwauls and bellows of animals, showed a higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention, and deteriorating health than those in House Tree. So what this tells is, although the situation is nearer to nature, but the sounds that they experience here are not pleasant sounds. Caterwaul means the noises that cats make sometimes. Okay, unpleasant noises. Caterwauls and bellows of animals. Some bass sounds that sometimes bigger animals make. Okay, caterwauls and bellows animals are definitely unpleasant sounds. Showed higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention, deteriorating health than those in House Tree. So that just tells, instead of natural pleasant, if you give natural unpleasant, that is higher. But then it creates three different situations here: natural pleasant, natural unpleasant, unnatural unpleasant. So you won't be able to make a clear gradation in the different patterns that you see here, like we saw in second one. Natural pleasant, natural unpleasant, unnatural unpleasant. So there is no proper slow gradation of the change of conditions here. So I would say 3 is not as good as 2. Let's look at 4. The attention span of kids from House Tree was less on average than those from Z Kids. Attention span of these is less than of Z Kids, whereas the kids from Z Kids were more disturbed in class. Okay, this tells that there are two opposing no effects that they see, that doesn't help you to conclude anything on the basis of what is already given. Because when you start speaking about attention span and all that, then what happens is you are speaking about something that is slightly different from what is already given. What all were given, it is given cried more, fought more, less attentive, more overweight. So these are the four things we are looking at. Attention span for house tree was less than Z kids, whereas kids from Z kids were more disturbed in class. So you are giving two opposing effect. Now that will not help you to conclude anything based on what is given. It will only make things a little more confusing. Just give me a minute, guys. Okay, just give me a minute. Great, there was some problem with the camera suddenly. Let's continue with the way we left. So the attention span of attention span of kids from house tree was less on average than Z kids, whereas kids from Z kids were more. So you are giving two opposing effects for those two. That will only make the already existing state even more confusing. It's not going to explain anything on how you can get a conclusion on the basis of this. Someone wants me to repeat 2 once again. Okay, I'll come to 2 once again. Let's go to the 5th one and then I will come back to 2. The kids from a 3rd preschool nearer to the main road with sharper screeching sounds of cars and yells of workers showed similar incidences of crying, fighting, attention span and health to those of Z kids. That only tells that if you have unpleasant sounds, they are going to have similar effects like what Z kids had. That doesn't tell anything about how sounds vary. It doesn't tell anything about what is the case with house tree at all. It is only going to confirm that if you have unpleasant sounds, they are going to have these kind of effects of crying more, fighting more, and so on. So this also doesn't help us to conclude something overall. Now I'm going to explain 2 once again. Please listen. The kids from a 3rd preschool with soundproof walls showed higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention, and deteriorating health than those in house tree and lower than those from Z kids. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. They took a 3rd school, right? And the effects, I'm just putting these as negative effects. Let's call all of this together as negative effects on kids. So the negative effects in these 3 cases, when you see, it is given that in the 3rd preschool without any sound, there is no pleasant sound, there is no unpleasant sound. There when you see, we're able to see the higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention, deteriorating health than those in house tree. So compared to house tree, this is more. So compared to the situation where you have natural pleasant sounds, not having any sounds, there is a greater incidence of negative effects, but lower than those in Z kids. But this is lesser than here. So that gives me a clear gradation. What gradation? Unpleasant sound, no sound, pleasant sound. Okay, unpleasant, neither unpleasant nor pleasant, pleasant. And if you see here, it is the maximum, the negative effects are the maximum here. Negative effects are in between, negative effects are the least. So that tells me the more pleasant sound they get exposed to, the lesser is the chance of having these kind of negative effects. Okay. Okay, someone is asking, type 2 if you're clear with why we are able to build a slowly changing situation here. Type 2 if you're able to understand that. Because unpleasant, no sound, pleasant. Let's look at point 3 once again. Someone wants me to discuss point 3. In point 3, we are even not sure if the 3rd school will be in the middle now. It could be at the left, extreme left. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Very good. That point is nicely made by Gaurav. See, in this case, if you see, it is not clear whether it is going to be here, because that school is, it is nearer to nature, exposed to unpleasant sounds, showed higher incidences of crying, fighting, lack of attention deteriorating than house tree. Okay, higher than house tree, but is it higher than Z kids as well? We don't know, right? We don't know whether it's higher than Z kids as well. We don't know whether it is going to fall in the middle or it's going to be higher than Z kids as well. So you don't get a clear gradation there. Okay, but here you know this is greater than this, which is greater than that. In terms of causes, maximum unpleasant sounds, lesser unpleasant sounds means you don't have any sound. Here there is more pleasant sound. So you can see the cause also is slowly changing towards unpleasant to pleasant, and effect also is slowly changing from maximum negative effect to minimum negative effect. So that's where you can support with a solid conclusion here. So that's why 2 is going to help us the most of all these points you have to draw a conclusion based on the observation. Please type 2 if everybody is clear with how we solved this question. How many of you felt that this one is tricky? If you felt this one is tricky, type T. Right, because I could not see a lot of you getting it right. So I believe that probably you took a little longer to read because the options were pretty long. So in the given time limit of 2.5 seconds, you might not have been able to solve it if you are not able to read it pretty quickly. Great, let's move to the next question then. The next question is up in the quiz. It's also up on your screen here. Great, the time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard at the end of your attempts of this question. Very good, some of you have got it right. There's some shift on the top in the leaderboard as well. Let's see how we can solve this. We are supposed to read the paragraph in question below and find the most suitable concluding sentence or part of sentence from the options. Okay. Amazon has been one of the rare companies to take on new workers during the pandemic, but its employment practices need close scrutiny. A comprehensive new report published by the Trades Union Congress describes 10-hour working days with 300 items picked and packed each hour. That's 5 items per minute, and workers penalized or even sacked for not keeping up. It describes a culture of fear and notes that ambulances have been called to Amazon warehouses in Britain 600 times in 3 years. Actually, it doesn't give me much of an idea as to whether that's on the higher level or lower level. Looks like it's a higher level. The situation has only exacerbated with the pandemic. Drivers are thought to deliver 200 parcels a day. They are also self-employed, meaning that, okay, let's look at the options. Meaning that reports of inadequate social distancing and lack of PPE are true. Well, how does that mean that inadequate social distancing and lack of PPE are true? Just because they're self-employed? No, you can get rid of that. A COVID-19 outbreak at Amazon plans is just around the corner. Why? Just because you're self-employed doesn't mean that a COVID-19 outbreak at Amazon plants is just around the corner because they deliver 200 parcels? No. The pressure has only increased with COVID-19. Which pressure? Drivers are thought to deliver 200 parcels a day. They are also self-employed, meaning that. So mainly that meaning that should have something to do with their self-employment. Okay. The pressure has only increased with COVID-19 doesn't convey how self-employment is more pressure. Right? So you can get rid of that. Meaning that this is wrong on so many levels. Why? Why is that wrong? Maybe self-employment is good for them. So we cannot say it's wrong on so many levels without explaining why it is wrong on so many levels. Let's look at the next one. Amazon is not liable if anything goes wrong. That makes sense. Because you're self-employed, you are not an employee of Amazon. So if something goes wrong with the driver, Amazon might not be held responsible because you're not an employee of Amazon, you are self-employed. This kind of makes sense to me. They are also self-employed. Why would you go for this? Because throughout, if you see the passage also has this tone of saying that Amazon doesn't care really well for their workers, right? That's what they have been trying to hint at. 10-hour working days, 300 items picked and packed each minute, 600 times ambulances have been called. So throughout, they have been trying to tell that Amazon doesn't care about the employees in that particular situation, right? So to end with, Amazon is not liable if anything goes wrong only makes a better sense in this case, okay? Because they are self-employed. If something goes wrong, you got to take care of it. You're not an employee, okay? So the best answer we have is option 5 for this question. Great. Type 5 if you're clear with how we solved this particular question. I think there's a bit of lag, but I'm waiting for you guys to respond in the chat box so that I know that you guys have understood. Great, responses are coming in. That's perfect. Let's move to the next question, guys. We have got 8 questions. We are going to the 6th question of the day. The 6th question is up in the quiz. It's also up on your screen here. Great. The time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard. Good. Some of you have got it right. Let's see how we can approach this one. In today's India, offensive speech, that is speech which seems intolerable to someone or offends someone, is restricted in the name of democracy. When this restriction in itself is a violation of one of the pillars of democracy, the freedom of speech. You're restricting something in the name of democracy, and that restricting itself is violating democracy. Okay. What is the author primarily doing in the above statement? Pointing out the inconsistencies in the definition of democracy. Looks like it, because in the name of democracy you're restricting something which again is violating something else that democracy puts out. So I think this could be the answer, but let's keep it aside and look at the other ones. Calling the credentials of the opponent, he is not calling credentials of anybody here. Drawing attention to a contradiction in the two forms of democracy. Now, these are not two forms of democracy. The two things being told here are not two forms of democracy, right? I mean, let's say a presidential form and a parliamentary form. No, those are forms of democracy. These are definitely not two different forms. I don't think they're exactly views. Comparing two opposing views and establishing the superiority of one. So I don't think they're exactly views here. He is looking at what democracy allows and what democracy doesn't allow. So it's not exactly views. And establishing the superiority of one, definitely not. He's not establishing superiority of anything here. So that is also ruled out. So we are only left with option 1, which is making any kind of sense to what is happening here. So type 1 if you're clear with why we are going with option 1 for this question. Great, I'm seeing some responses here. If you want me to explain on any particular option once again, you can please type the option number. I'll explain that once again. Perfect. Let's move to the next question then. I'm going to the next question in the quiz. I think we did have a bit of lag initially around the last 30-40 seconds. But I think it's getting back to normal now. The next question is up in the quiz. The next question is also up on the screen right now. I think towards the end of last question, we had a bit of lag. I think it's kind of fine now. Great, the time is up. Let's see how we can answer this. Okay, before that, status of the leaderboard. Very good. I could see a few of you consistently rising on the top. Some of you are getting it wrong. You got to be a little careful. Let's see how we can solve this one. An accurate measure of drug efficacy, means how efficient the drug is, would require comparing the response of patients taking it with that of patients taking placebos. Placebos are what? False medicines. I mean, they're administered telling the patients that they are medicines, but they are almost nothing. So patients will psychologically feel that they're having medicine, but probably it doesn't have any physical effect on their body, any no physiological effect on their body. Okay. An accurate measure of drug efficacy would require comparing the response of patients taking it with that of patients taking placebos. The drug effect could then be calculated by subtracting the placebo response from the overall response, much as a deli counter worker subtracts the weight of the container to determine how much lobster salad you're getting. In the last half of the 1950s, this calculus gave rise to a new way to evaluate drugs, the double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, in which neither patient nor clinician knew who was getting the active drug and who the placebo. Okay, let's look at the question here. Which of the options is the wrong answer to the question? How does a double-blind ensure a better trial of a new drug? We'll have to find out which options will give a wrong answer. Let's see. It gives rise to unbiased testing of drugs. Looks like it, right? It looks like it, but that's a right answer. We are looking for what? How does a double blind ensure better trial of a new drug? For that question, wrong answer. So this is our target. It gives rise to unbiased testing of drug, looks like the right answer. So that cannot be our answer, as we are looking for the wrong answer. Next, the clinician cannot pick and choose patients to whom placebos can be administered. Obviously, because he himself doesn't know. So he cannot pick and choose. It reflects the calculus exemplified by the deli counter episode. Yes, because you subtract the placebo effect on the patient, and then you find out what is the net effect. Very similar to the deli counter episode. So that's also a part of the right answer. You cannot say that's the wrong answer. It increases the overall response. Oh, look at this. It increases the overall response. How does it increase overall response? Just because you're doing a placebo and a real test and you're not telling people who are involved in the test, it doesn't mean it's going to increase the response, right? So this looks like is the answer. Let's look at the next one. The patient does not know whether he or she is getting placebo. True. Because of that, when they give their answers, the answers are going to be more unpolluted, right? So this also can be the answer to this question. How does double blind ensure a better trial of a new drug? So which of them will be a wrong answer? It increases the overall response. It doesn't increase the overall response. The responses tend to be the same. Maybe the quality of responses might increase, but it doesn't increase the overall response to the drug. So the best answer we have is option 4. This question came in XAT. Type 4 if you're clear with why we are going with option 4 for this question. Perfect. So we are left with the last question for today's discussion. Let's see how many of you can get that right. And that's an actual XAT question. I am going to the last question of today's quiz. It's up on the quiz. And it's also up on your screen here. Your chat is visible, Ayan. Ayan is asking, is my chat visible? Your chat is visible. The time is up. The time is up. So before we go ahead and see what is the status of the leaderboard at the end of this question, if you haven't liked this video, go ahead and smash that like button right now. If you're liking the way the session is going, it helps us to reach more people. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel to get constant updates on what we upload in the channel. So do like the video. If you haven't liked the video, I'm just reminding you. Let's see how we can solve this question. And those of you who are not taking the quiz, if you're there in the live session, it will make a lot of sense for you to take the quiz. You just have to visit the first link that you see in the description, and you can take the live quiz to see where you stand with respect to the competition. Okay, great. Let's look at the final status of the leaderboard. Awesome. Congrats to all of you guys who have come on the leaderboard. Some of you were not there on the leaderboard. You slowly came up. Some of you were pretty down on the leaderboard and you kind of fought and came on the top of the leaderboard. Congrats to all of you guys. Let's go forward and see how to solve this one. Alligators are freshwater reptiles. Just a minute. Okay. Alligators are freshwater reptiles. However, people have come face to face with them in mud in a salt marsh in Georgia. Finding alligators in the salt marsh is not a mystery or a miracle. At least 23 species of predators have been spotted living in surprising habitats. Predators such as alligators, otters, mountain lions, wolves, and raptors are thriving in places they shouldn't, revealing some serious misunderstanding about their behavior and how to protect them. Scientific literature divulges that these creatures are actually returning to places they once occupied. Okay, so probably they were there earlier. It gives us astonishing insights into the lives of animals and helps conservationists improve the old stomping grounds of these creatures. Okay. Which of the following statements provides the most plausible is similar to possible, most plausible explanation of the predator's behavior? Okay, what behavior? That sometimes they're also found in grounds where they are not expected to be. But it is also given that scientific literature divulges that these creatures are actually returning to the places they have once occupied. So it's not that they are returning to places that are new to them. New to them means it could be new to that particular alligator, but the entire species at some point of time might have been there. Okay, let's look at the options to see which of the options is the most plausible explanation of the predator's behavior. Option 1. Predators prefer to occupy different habitats depending on season and prevailing weather. Okay, if that is the case, then the seasons don't come after, let's say, hundreds of years, right? The seasons will come pretty frequently. So people would have figured out that they are capable of living in other kind of habitats also. But here when they say that predators are freshwater reptiles, means people kind of generalize it. Predators generally stay in freshwaters. So if they change with season, then it doesn't take a lot of time for season change. You can easily figure out that they are going to marshy lands and saltwater areas also within different seasons. So that kind of generalization that they are freshwater reptiles would not have come if they occupy different habitats depending upon season and prevailing weather, because season and weather do change more frequently. That is out. Predators migrate to habitat different from where they were born. Okay, in that case, if they are born in freshwater, they should have gone to salt marsh or something, or they have born in salt marsh, should have come to freshwater, but that kind of shift we did not see for a long time. That's why we generally tend to believe that predators are freshwater reptiles. So it is not about migrating to a different habitat from where they were born. In that case, we would have noticed, right? I mean, it doesn't take hundreds of years to migrate. Predators are fully aware of where they were born. So how does that explain this behavior of predators? That suddenly they are going back to places where they were normally not seen at all. Doesn't explain why. Predators have no awareness of where they were born. So why should they go to other places? See, if you don't have any awareness of where you are born, if you're born in freshwater, Okay, let's say, fine, you go into salt marsh because you're not aware that you were born in freshwater. Then you will give birth in salt marsh, then they'll have to come back to freshwater. So we would have identified that they are capable of going to multiple habitats. They are not just freshwater. But why have people generalized that they are freshwater? Because for a long period, they have been found in freshwater. Long means not like 2 hours, 3 hours, or 5 years, 10 years, for probably centuries. That's when people generalize something, right? So they have no awareness where they were born, doesn't explain anything. Predators have a genetic memory of their traditional stomping ground. Now that's going to help us to answer this, because if they have a genetic memory, let's say a predator, these kind of predators that we are speaking about, alligators, otters, mountain lions, and all that, even if for hundreds of years they belong to a particular habitat, if they have a genetic memory, means that is something that has been passed through the genes, through their parents. So if they have a genetic memory of their old stomping grounds, they can still go back, even though for a good amount of time that species might not have gone to that place. So if genetic memory is there, then after a very long time, they might be able to go back to their original old stomping grounds. So that explains why we think that they are in surprising habitats, because we probably haven't seen them in those kind of habitats, because for a long time they did not go to those habitats, but now they are able to go because it is there in their genes, although for maybe hundreds of years they have not been going there. So genetic memory kind of explains why this surprising behavior is happening. So that is the best option we have here. Type 5 if you're clear with why we are going with option 5 for this question. If you're there in the live quiz, if you're there in the live session, you can give a response. Excellent. With that, we have come to the end of the discussion, and this live session is happening a little before some of our students are about to go for XAT 2021. So all the best to all of you guys. And we're also doing this discussion on 31st of December, the last day of the year, which was not a great year so far, the year of the COVID-19, the whole pandemic spreading and all that. So best wishes to all of you guys for your XAT exam, and best wishes for the new year. Hope we have a great year coming forward. Hope we are all coming out of this particular pandemic. See you guys. All the best for your exams. Good night.